Donald Trump, everyone, surging to the highest level yet in new polls. I am Trish Regan. Welcome to the Intelligence Report. A new poll from the Wall Street Journal shows Donald Trump surging again, scoring 25% of all GOP voters. Ben Carson coming in a close second here, rising up to 22%, and Marco Rubio rounding out the three at 13. It is the year of the non-politician politician, right? This anti-establishment candidate. Whether it be Trump, whether it be Carson, they are crowding out the once favored Jeb Bush, who today is facing fresh attacks from the Donald on his brother's foreign policy and 9/11 happening under his brother's watch. Listen to this.
He said the country was safe under my brother. And I said, just very nicely, under a very little program. I said, well, wait a minute. It wasn't safe because the World Trade Center fell down under your brother's regime. So the world wasn't safe. The country wasn't safe. We had the biggest catastrophe and the greatest catastrophe we've ever had in history.
What's more, we found a passage of Trump's book published back in the year 2000 warning of such an attack. Donald Trump writes, and I quote, I am convinced that we are in danger of the sort of terror attack that will make the bombing of the Trade Center look like kids playing with firecrackers. Wow. All right. So will Donald Trump wind up looking better on foreign policy than anyone else? We have breaking analysis on the GOP race with Fox News contributor Meghan McCain here today in-house, best-selling author Gina Loudon, and liberal talk show host Sean Pittman. Good to have all you guys here. Gina, I'm going to start with you. This is a poll that was taken over the weekend as the country was in full swing, talking about some of his comments that he made, Donald Trump made about 9/11, blaming George W. for it. And yet here he is coming out, moving higher and higher in this poll. People liking him all the more in the face of these comments?
Yeah, I think that the people see him as somebody who is going to be tough on terror and immigration, and I think that's what this comes down to. People know that, you know, no matter how much we liked the way George W. handled things after the whole terrorist attack took place, that a couple of those terrorists were illegals, and Donald Trump has vowed a zero tolerance policy on illegal immigration, and I think that's what this comes down to, and I think that's why he's gaining in the polls.
This is part of his point that he made on Chris Wallace's program over the weekend. He said, look, these people would not have been in this country. I am very tough on illegal immigration. They wouldn't have been here, and thus 9/11 would not have happened. Meghan McCain, listen to what Jeb Bush had to say in his brother's defense last night on Sean Hannity's program. I'd like to get your response.
His view of history is just wrong. The simple fact is that when we were attacked, my brother created an environment where for 2,600 days we were safe. No one attacked us again. And he changed the laws, he did everything necessary, he united the country, and he kept us safe. And just a tip of the hat to that, and moving on to what the threats are today is what we ought to be focused on. Donald Trump is not a serious candidate as it relates to foreign policy.
You know, the struggle for him, of course, is he wants to defend his brother. That's natural. He should defend his brother. Yet at the same time, in doing so, he almost drags himself further and further, Meghan, into that hole where he's now sparring with Trump. And I don't know how he comes out ahead here.
I don't agree with Donald Trump, but I think this is brilliant politics on his part. What he's doing is he's reminding the American people that Jeb Bush would be a third-generation Bush in office. He's reminding people of the controversial presidency that George W. Bush's legacy was. I personally am a fan of George W. Bush. I think he kept America safe. I think he made tough choices in leadership in hard times, and the exact opposite of what President Obama has done during this legacy of completely failed, feckless foreign policy in every conceivable way. My focus right now, I'm a Politico. I do this for a living every single day. I want to know what Donald Trump's plan is, policy specific going forward. Okay, tell me exactly how, other than this immigration plan, which would take time to implement, it would take time to pass through Congress. How exactly would you have kept us safe other than that? And I understand it's easy to talk in these big platitudes and I'm going to keep America safe, I'm going to make it great. I've been around this game way too long. I was born into it. I need you to get policy specific, but he's rising in the polls. He's clearly resonating with a segment of the population. But what's most interesting in that poll you showed is Marco Rubio in third. I mean, that's somebody you should watch for. He, to me, he's my number one. I love him. I think he's the conservative Americans are going to take a second look at. I really think he is the best candidate to go up against Hillary Clinton.
Let's get back to Rubio in a second, because I do want to talk about that. He is an interesting candidate and sort of represents sort of a fresh face in the Republican field right now. But back to Donald Trump here. Sean, you know, he's playing to Peoria to a certain extent. And yet, at the same time, this is kind of the unthinkable thing to say. I mean, people, they rally around their president in a time of crisis. And I think people look back and they feel very strongly that, you know, W did everything he could to keep us safe in that really scary environment. And yet all of a sudden, Donald Trump coming out swinging again, and people respond, they like it. What's going on?
Well, I still think, and I differ with Megan a little bit, I still think that people are voting for his celebrity. I think his celebrity is still what's happening here. I mean, the one thing that hasn't happened here is a real talk about policies. And I don't think you can look at where we are today in polls and say that people are judging these candidates based on policy. They're judging them on likability and entertainment. And unfortunately for my friend Jeb Bush, we all know, some of you know I'm in Florida, he's not entertaining and nobody's listening to his policies. Now, I agree with Megan that Donald Trump is doing brilliant politics in that he is touching buttons and making you respond. He's done that the entire time that he's been running, and that's working.
How much do you think it's premeditated? I've asked this question before. You know, Sean, shouldn't you right? I mean, how much do you think he's really thinking through all this, or does it just kind of happen and he's shooting from the hip and he says these things, and what do you know, they resonate? And how much might actually be somewhat planned out?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, he's got some folks on staff that are saying to him what are great things to say, but he's been off the cuff from the very beginning, and I'll tell you, he will continue this. What I believe, though, is that when this race gets to the point where people are listening to policies and wanting to know where you are on certain issues, I think that's when we see his numbers start to change.
You know, Megan,
until then, everybody's there on celebrity, and that's.
Well, you know, people
so
said that,
Megan a little bit.
I actually don't think it's just celebrity. Just to disagree with you, because I think he is living out a lot of fantasies of a lot of people, just saying exactly what you think all the time, not caring if it's politically correct or not. I'm not a big Trump fan after what he said about my father. I'm just never going to get over that.
How could you be?
But I understand why he is resonating with people, because again, he's after so many years of hope and change, and President Obama has to focus group which tie he puts on in the morning, and now we have the complete polar opposite
Megan,
man.
does this really show you the frustration, though, of the American voter, how they're so fed up with the status quo and with the career politician?
I've never seen anything like this in politics before. It's a really fascinating time in American history. It's not just that. I mean, what's going on with House Speaker Boehner and who's taking over? I mean, people are mad and they're angry and they want anything that is anti-Washington, anti-establishment in. The danger of that is somebody has to know how Washington works in one way or another. Again,
yeah, I mean, that's a valid point, and I would point this out. I mean, Gina, you think about a CEO like Donald Trump. He runs his own company. He gets to call all his own shots. He doesn't have to even answer to shareholders. On the other hand, if you're the president, you got all these constituencies, you got to make everybody happy all the time. How does he bring Washington together if he's the one that gets the job?
He didn't get there, as you know, by being somebody who wasn't brilliant at what he did. And I think most Americans are looking at that and saying, you know, if he could do for the typical American what he's done for his empire, then I think that would be a great thing. And I think it's really disrespectful as a pundit. I really try to say that, you know, to insult his supporters and say that they're just looking at this from an entertainment perspective. No, he's put up his position papers on his website. He's been very clear about where he stands on the Second Amendment.
I feel like he at least came forward with a tax plan, which I can't say of every candidate out there.
And the Second
Amendment
and
we got nothing.
illegal immigration.
But yes, he has put forward a fairly comprehensive tax plan for us to sink our teeth into. Something that, frankly, no, I think that was Sean actually that said that it was it's entertainment driven.
And Trish, if I could respond, I'm speaking in generalities.
I can't hear you,
There's
Sean.
exceptions.
There you go.
I'm speaking in generalities here. I mean, there's exceptions to every rule. And I'm more speaking about the electorate. I'm not really speaking about Donald Trump.
Yeah.
There is the truth of the electorate here is there's a point at which average people get engaged. Right now, we're engaged.
You know what?
Those of us who follow politics,
the one thing you got to say
votes.
about Donald Trump is he is getting your average person engaged.
Yes.
25 million people tuning into our debate.
There's something
to be said for that.
This is what we also need to be careful of, is anyone who doesn't support Donald Trump. There's a lot of Republicans that don't support Donald Trump.
Hang on, Gina.
Well, this is what's dangerous, is right now there's a lot of people that if you don't support Donald Trump, somehow you're pro-establishment, which isn't the case at all. You just may not be a supporter of Donald Trump. And what's scary right now is anyone that goes on TV like I do, we're automatically labeled establishment rhinos. That's just not the case. I'm just happen to be more of a fan of Marco Rubio, and I'm not insulting his supporters. I'm just questioning.
There's a growing number of people that are supporting Marco Rubio right now. I want to talk about that some more coming up. We are crunched on time. We're going to get to another story. Thank you so much, Megan, Gina, Sean. I'm going to see some of you guys in just a little bit.